Clubhouse.
Welcome back to Pod Clubhouse's Day 2 coverage of the 14th season of ATX. This is Paul.
This is Caroline.
And this is Mike.
Well, my day started off with a roundtable. Remember, with last year's festival, they introduced these things called roundtables, which we, as members of the press, are familiar with as the kinds of things that we get invited to talk to the creators and cast of different shows that normal people, readers, consumers, etc., don't normally have access to. But here at ATX, they gave everybody access to these people. And this is a continuation of that. And this one was with two working Hollywood producers.
Tell us a little bit about it. What are you guys talking about?
Well, the first producer was basically Norman Lear's last producer. His name was Brent Miller, and his story was mostly based in the fact that he made the most of a connection made during his first career, which was producing live events. He said he produced everything from bar mitzvahs to the Super Bowl. And one of the things he produced was Norman Lear's like 95th birthday extravaganza or something like that. And so he made the connection with Norman Lear and convinced him to get back into TV. And he came with him as a producer. And so he produced the last couple of shows that Norman produced.
Wow, that's wild.
Yeah.
What types of questions were people asking?
Oh, you know, the normal kinds of stuff, like how do you get into it? What do you do? Who do you got to know? Like all that kind of stuff.
Were they willing to share or did they keep guarded?
He was willing to share, but his was so unique.
Doesn't it always seem that way? They'll say something like, I was walking down the sidewalk and I fell down and the person who picked me up was David E. Kelley. And you're like, what?
I mean, that's
Yeah.
David E. Kelley's story almost like, I mean, it's the wildest, like 1 in a million,
Yeah.
it will never happen again kind of story for sure.
The second producer was Mona Garcia, I think her name was. It looks like Garcia, but it isn't. And she had been most recently a producer on the Night Court revival, as well as other sitcoms, which, if you're not keeping track, there aren't a lot.
There aren't not a lot.
There aren't a lot.
That was a topic of conversation yesterday.
And controversially, I did get to ask her a question about whether or not she thought the strikes were worth it, given the fallout from the strikes. Now, this is a non-writing producer's perspective. You know, there's writing producers and non-writing producers. She's a non-writing producer. Her perspective was, no, it was not worth it. That they asked for too much, and here we are making nothing as a result.
Wow.
So,
That's hard to hear.
yeah.
So especially as TV watchers, I mean, we all sort of were like, we got to sacrifice, you know, we got to hold the line with them and everything. And then, yeah, that's really a bummer.
And she didn't hedge her answer. She was confident about it. And I doubt she'd be alone with that appraisal.
Yeah, no, I mean, they're playing people who are still suffering. I mean, we talked to Beth Kushnick on our podcast all the time, and the guests that she's brought on all through season 6, all sorts of below the line people, behind the camera people, and they're all, you know, looking for jobs. And and this is New York based. This isn't middle of nowhere. And
It's also not LA, which is important.
Which is not
because
LA,
sometimes
yeah.
People are feeling like, well, California's not giving the tax breaks.
LA is in a worse place right now
They
than
are.
New York is. I mean,
They
New
are.
York actually is busier than LA. You talk to anyone there. I mean, Chicago has, we talked to the set deck guy from The Bear, Eric Frankel. There's 2 shows going on in Chicago right now. That's it. Because if Chicago, the World of Chicago 1 shows aren't like in production, no one's working. I mean, which creates a very cozy kind of atmosphere, and they all know each other and they work well together and they're well oiled. But there's a total of like 2,500 union members. That's it. It's very small. It's a small ecosystem because there's just no work. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy how after COVID, we got back on our feet, the strikes, and we just kind of haven't recovered. Everything's either overseas. Baranski, you know, during the strike, she was filming TV, but she was doing it overseas with 9 Perfect Strangers. You know, like she was working, she just wasn't working in America, you know, but we're consuming it in America though. So Was it worth it? I don't know.
I mean, I definitely people in the industry seem like it's a very mixed bag. You guys, one of the things I wanted to point out that I liked that they added to this lineup for Friday was Muslim Matchmaker. This was a show that I didn't know anything about. It was unscripted stories, real connections. It was presented by MPAC, Hollywood Bureau, and ATX TV, and I just felt like this was a really cool ad that added a level of diversity that felt very organic and natural, and it sort of expanded my viewpoint on some different ideas that I wasn't expecting. There's a lot of humor. I don't know. I'm actually really want to watch the show now. So I'm glad. This is one of the cool things about ATX when they plop something in there that you're like, I didn't even know that was a thing, and I totally want to watch it. And now I'm for it. I don't know if you guys have found some of those ones that are out there that you're like, hey, hang on a minute. But I know Duster for you, Paul, was one that you were interested in.
Yeah, that was my next panel, was Duster. It's an HBO show set in the 70s. It's odd. It's meant to very much resemble a 70s show, as opposed to a show set in the 70s. Does that make sense? The fact that it reminds you of like Starsky and Hutch or Dukes of Hazzard or something like that, that's intentional. It's supposed to have that heightened level of realism.
Not filmed on film, though.
Well, they didn't mention that. I don't think it is, but
you can add filters to it, though, to make it look like that anyway, if they wanted to.
But the clothing and the cars and the hair, that all is meant to be very specific to the time. But also, they're not making a 70s documentary like you might get with, like, say, if David Fincher made a movie in the 70s, it would feel very much like the 70s, like Zodiac. I don't know if you saw Zodiac, but that's the 70s in a very dark, real kind of way. And this is not. The colors are bright. It's all kind of larger than life. And
it is larger than life. That's one of the things that I enjoy about the show is that it has this quirky nature to it. Like the beginning credits are Hot Wheels cars going around that are like the Duster and like as if he's having a chase, but it's with a Hot Wheels car. Stuff like that always catches my attention because the creativity level seems like up many notches on this show. I know you mentioned there was like a cartoon sequence where Josh Holloway, who plays our main guy, Jim Ellis, is watching cartoons with a kiddo, and it's a Bugs Bunny thing, and they actually animate him into the cartoon.
Yeah,
it's trippy as hell, but also for me, again, great summertime show, something to kick back and just kind of like. Your brain can just wander and let it be creative and enjoy the creativity of these creators, basically.
Well, you were describing it to me. It sounded like car porn. It sounded just kind of like
a little.
There's some good car porn.
Like if you're into like cars revving and squealing and burning out, like this is like a show for you.
And I looked at Paul and I said, okay, first of all, the Duster is the car. So that's what it's like named after, right? That's what Jim Ellis drives, the Duster. The Duster, I looked at Paul and I said, if the Duster does not fly off a big dirt hill in the first 5 minutes, I'm going to be shocked. 2 seconds later, whoop, right off of the hill, General Lee style. And I was like, okay, this is going to scratch an itch for a lot of people. Even if you're not a car person, there's still something very exciting and fun about a cool car chase with lots of burnouts and squealing and just wild dustiness.
Just need like a boss hog meal. I'm going to get me in them Ellis boys.
There is 100% a boss hog element in this.
That's very funny.
With a sheriff type that, yeah, absolutely, you get that same vibe.
Fun fact: first time I was ever in Texas was about 12 years ago, and I went to some restaurant that was obviously a very touristy restaurant meant for people not from Texas, but they had the General Lee like bolted to the ceiling of the of like the restaurant, and it was, you know, the waitresses were all dressed in a provocative style and such, and it was like,
by provocative do you mean like cutoffs or something, because that's just general wear?
More, but like amped up, like not just like Daisy Dukes, but like, you know, the tops like tied around and stuff, and you know, the cowgirl hats and stuff. I was like, this is Texas, all right.
So Rachel Hilson was actually there on the panel.
She was with Keith David and Asavak Kostachin.
I really like Rachel Hilson in this. She is kind of interesting because the age difference between her and Josh Holloway might not be that much in real life, but in the way that they look in the show, Jim feels old to be doing what he's doing, and she feels super young to be doing what she's doing.
She is. Yeah.
So you get this real interesting, like I'm not accustomed to that. We all know Josh Holloway from from Lost as Sawyer, and he always played sort of like the leading man, and in a way he is, but he's playing this like aging leading man, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he would not like to hear that. None of us do. But there's something about it that actually really works with Rachel, because they almost have a father-daughter feel to
There's
them.
no sexual tension. That's not going to be a part of this
Right,
story.
which I actually am very cool with, because I think that flips it on its head of just being a regular 70s show where you kind of think like everybody's hooking up with Daisy Duke, or whatever. Like you don't have that feel. She feels professional. She feels cool. She feels smart. She makes really great deductions. She's somebody who, like, if you needed to solve a case, you'd want her on your team because she knows how to get stuff done, even though, I mean, she's a woman in the FBI and they go out of their way to show a whole lot of discrimination against her for multiple reasons.
They do.
But I really feel like they still nailed her as a person who's very, very competent and very, Jim's lucky to have her around, I think.
It's being promoted as a J.J. Abrams show, but it sounds like he's the name that got it made, but the person in charge is LaToya Morgan, who this looks like her first big shot running a show, but she has experience on shows like Shameless, Parenthood, The Walking Dead, Into the Badlands, and a show called Turn, Washington's Spies.
Well, Into the Badland, I was a big, big fan of that show. I loved it. And it was a very surreal take on a kind of kung fu action show. Think of like Asian martial arts in a post-apocalyptic wasteland, kind of, where the world was broken up into factions, but like Asian martial arts style. So there were like kingdoms more than there were crime bosses, but it was essentially the same thing. And,
Firearms were illegal, right?
No firearm. It was all with like, it was like swords or like hand-to-hand fighting, but it was some of the most gorgeous martial arts choreography I've ever seen. I'm a big fan of. It was like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon kind of
but
fighting, but every week.
Yeah.
And it blew my mind. And Nick Frost was in it, and the guy who played Sonny, God, he was just cast in something, and I'm blanking on him now. Fantastic. It was surreal, and it sounds kind of like how this show is like not just a straight 70s show, but with trippy. This was Asian martial arts, post-apocalyptic, like Revolution meets a kung fu film, but mashed together. So it was kind of trippy in a way, but I absolutely loved it.
It sounds like the same as like if you were wanting to really highlight and make beautiful like stunt car driving, showing how they do all these different like really rad stunt car sequences. I mean, you will get your fill. It's amazing. And again, for like a summertime show, super fun. There's a mystery element. There's like something you want to solve here, but at the same time, again, I'm not having nightmares about this. I'm not stewing about it at night at all. I'm excited and I want to see Rachel get her man, but at the same time, I'm not scared.
Jim has a fight scene with Patrick Warburton, and that might give you nightmares.
I don't want to fight Putty.
Putty gets down, man.
Original Tick.
Putty is a force.
There's also this like part though, like in the pilot where Jim there's a whole setup going on at the bar where they're trying to set this man up, and he is so fixated on trying to get a panda ring out of one of those bubblegum machines that he keeps feeding it quarters, and he's actually like screwing up the setup because he should be getting back over there, but he's like putting more quarters in. That's the type of tension I'm talking about when I say I'm not gonna have nightmares over whether he gets the pan out in time. Like there's tension and it's exciting, but it's not stressful at all.
Is Duster based on existing IP, a book or something, or is this something brand new out of her brain?
Brand new.
Did she get into why the 70s kind of on LSD vibe to it? Because it's hard to find something original these days, and this sounds trippy as hell kind of original, which is fun.
I think if I remember correctly, it was an idea born out of conversations with JJ, like they wanted to do a project together, and this is what came of it. It was sort of like a mutual interest in an area where neither of them had told a story before. It's on HBO right now.
So go watch, you guys. Go enjoy. Go, again, pop your popcorn, put your feet up, enjoy. One of the cool things that they have added over the years with the festival, and forgive me, festival, if you guys did this from the very beginning and we just didn't realize it, is bringing in a lot more authors and having them have an opportunity where you can buy their book there. Like they actually had a book signing with E. Lockhart, who did the We Were Liars show that's coming out. I thought that was really cool that you could meet the author, get your book signed, you could purchase a book there if you wanted to. That is like that's leaning a little bit more into cons that we're used to. This festival didn't feel like it used to do. And I like that they're actually showcasing the authors and the places where we're like adapting shows from. To your point about like where did Duster come from, I think a lot of us want to know the source material and would go read it if we understood that it was a book.
Well, I think E. Lockhart, and whose name turns out to be Emily, as it was, but then also Tom Perrotta, who is the current like reigning king of book turned into TV show, but is still involved in it. You know, they were highlighted a bunch of different times this weekend. We Were Liars. They had the book signing with E. Lockhart. They had this panel that we're going to talk to now in a second about showrunners and authors. But then We Were Liars also had a screening panel right after that also, and she's involved. I mean, I didn't get the impression she's in the writing room the same way Tom Perrotta was in the writing room, but she was clearly involved in more than a Stephen King or, who wrote, he was with Graham Yost last year with Silo.
Hugh Howey.
Yes, where he kind of was like, he's like, I wrote the book and now you go adapt the book and I don't really need to, you know, be involved with it. Or Stephen King, who doesn't want to be involved in adaptations generally. These guys, or well, ladies, you know, wanted to be involved and were involved in watching how their books came to screen.
I thought it was really interesting. So Mike and I were in the showrunners and authors panel. And again, there was...
in the Hyatt-centric den.
Yes, with E. Lockhart being the author for We Were Liars, and then they brought their showrunners, and then brought Tom Perrotta and Damon Lindelof. Okay, I didn't even know that Tom Perrotta and Lindelof were going to be featured in there. That I would have like been much more like.
Oh, so that was the draw for me. That was what,
coming. Yeah. I know, but I really enjoyed how they talked a lot about their process, like how E. Lockhart said, like basically she had this idea of what the characters look like, but they all have like blurry faces in her mind. So like the idea of casting and actually putting a face to these names, that someone asked her in the audience, like, so now that you can see your characters on screen with real faces and like real personalities and everything, has that changed what they look like to you? And she said, no, they still have blurry faces. They're still my people. Like she still maintained that, but sort of like loaned them out to the show to like use her characters in a way.
Right.
Did they talk about Julie Plec and she's a co-creator of the show, but she also has kind of an extensive history of adapting other material. Like she had kind of a track record for doing that in a way that fans liked. She made the Vampire Diaries that's adapted from books, and that ran for a pretty long time.
And the originals then after it, I think.
Yeah,
too.
the
She was
originals.
involved in, yeah. And the other EP who was there with her was that Karina Adley McKenzie. Also, I mean, she declared herself like the adaptation queen or something, some such like that.
Well, and she's so into We Were Liars. You guys, if you're somebody who's like, I want somebody who is going to be like very conscientious about the material. She said she literally like listens to it on audiobook, like on a loop. Like she is listening to it constantly every day. She would say like when they were going to shoot a scene or something, she would tell everyone, go home and read like these pages of the book because like I want you to, that's how she was like, it must stay true. And then it was funny because E. Lockhart would be like, I don't care, change it if you want to change it. Like it's a different medium and you can't do everything in the same way.
Shocking how not precious these guys are. But Perrotta, though, too, he definitely felt like a I think he used the responsibility to protect the characters, but also super not precious if they needed to change things, which surprises me. I feel like if I wrote something that was then, especially something that was successful, I feel like I would be very territorial about it, but also maybe that's what the money's for, you know? And,
I think so.
And you're kind of giving up, you know, the some of the control over it. But like you said, the Karina Adley McKenzie, she was super, like,
she was the gatekeeper
to
of that book,
almost disturbing. Like, almost like,
even the author was like, holy smokes,
yeah,
like,
she was like, you're too involved. Like, I think that was brand new news when she heard how many copies this woman has of her books. All of them like dog-eared and colored and
like she had like 3 copies of one she would highlight in and one she would like do it. I mean, intense adaptation. And it was different. Obviously, we all know from The Leftovers that the book was used up in the first season. So then everything that happens after that was really a collaborative thing.
But Parada stayed involved though and said he felt very free though, which was interesting because it wasn't stepping on the toes of the book. Like it just had to be in the same world, but he felt a freedom for him to contribute and for the show and Damon and the show and the writer's room to write a story within there, which he entertained and felt very little pressure about then, which was...
I thought that was cool because he said at first, like, he was the author, so he was kind of the outsider in the writer's room and everybody's trying to, like, be careful with him. But then in the second season and the third season, he was fully collaborative. Like, he was equal to the other writers. No longer was he the author of the book and we have to stay true to his word. Everybody got to work together and he was really, really passionate about that part and thought it was really fun.
I saw a clip of a panel not related to ATX. I think it had Stephen King and it had John Grisham on it. And the topic was adapting your material. Grisham said, well, I think it comes down to that there are two kinds of authors. Authors that let their stuff be adapted and those that don't. And those that do just have to accept that it's going to change and just let it go.
I would think that it would be very difficult to sit there and spend 2 or 3 years of your life, creating these characters. And I mean, we all know Stephen King hates The Shining, and
yeah.
I mean, that's got to just be like a heartbreaker when you make something and you're so excited about the material and then you go and you show it to the author and they're like, stinkeroo, not what I thought at all, hate this. That would be incredibly depressing. And I would think, and a tremendous amount of pressure on the showrunner to take something that, again, like something like The Shining, We Were Liars is new, so we can't compare quite as much as, like, say, The Leftovers. But there is some surreal stuff in the writing that to try to translate onto screen and, like, how do I visually show this? Or, like, voiceovers or anything. How do I do inside my person's head? Because that's a big part of We Were Liars. They said she had a lot of things in her head.
monologue, right.
So how do I now take that from the page and turn that into something that's watchable? Because nobody wants to see somebody sit there thinking,
Right.
That's
it's like how TV shows have really moved to like showing text messaging, and doing exposition via text messaging. No, that's one way to communicate how people are thinking about, like versus like the Doogie Howser where we would get the, the end, wrap up, but he would also monologue what he was typing.
And
on
Carrie
the
Bradshaw, same,
Right.
she had the
We're refining the process, but just so we can get out of the way and don't forget, We Were Liars is going to premiere on Prime Video on June 18th, and they did say all 8 episodes are going to drop at once. Also, unlike The Leftovers, because this came up, where you will never learn what caused the rapture-like event, they are going to reveal the mystery and give the answer at the end of We Were Liars.
So just a quick little summary on that. It's a tragic love story, an amnesia thriller that picks up as 17-year-old Cadence, 17-year-old Cadence, returns to Beechwood, a private island off of Martha's Vineyard, seeking answers a year after a mysterious accident left her with amnesia. A great summertime one again, you guys. Like a little thriller, a little mystery.
From the 3 ladies representing the show, 2 different comparisons, because Damon even said this. He's like, we talk about shows nowadays as it's this meets this. He's like, and your goal is that one day your show becomes the thing they're saying is the thing meets something else. But anyway, so We Were Liars is either Big Little Lies meets Succession or Summer I Turned Pretty with more crime. So those are your 2 things. There was a funny bit, though. I don't know if you remember this, Caroline, was the moderator asked, well, what's the We Were Liars, elevator pitch? And she goes, first love, amnesia, mystery, kissing, cute dogs. And so then Damon goes, well, it's very similar to our, show of mystery dogs that we shoot in the neck. And, it was very funny.
And it was, that was a really nice balance in that panel because you had 2 guys who had done the show so long ago with such serious subject matter. And then you have these women who were here with a very new show talking about like how their process differed. And it really felt like you were seeing, getting 2 really great examples who handled things in different ways at a different time in history. which was, I think, looking back, if you looked at the panel, I think it will have like a lot of longevity. I think you'll look at it and be like, wow, okay, I see how this show did it at this time in TV history, and this show did it at this point.
I think Damon also, for people, I mean, I know you guys, obviously, you went deep into The Leftovers for years when you were podcasting it. But I think two things that came out that I didn't know about was, one, Damon apparently wanted to be very loyal to the book. And his first draft of scripts had like Kevin as the mayor, and they were reluctant to very change anything. And they showed HBO the first cut and they said, you know, you have to make Kevin more active. He can't be as passive. And they had floated around originally changing him to be the chief of police so that there would be tension with Lori and obviously, you know, the guilty remnant and a cop. And there, you know, you're just making more tension that way. But he was like, no, we're sticking to our guns and the book is going to be the book and we're keeping it sacrosanct. And HBO essentially, without saying it, I think Damon said they never explicitly said it, but he got very much the clue of, if you don't do this, we're not going to pick up the show. We have 9 things in production. We're going to take 2 maybe, and yours won't be with it. Like, we like your show, but this is boring. And so, and he kind of got forced. The hand was forced for him, though he didn't really seem sad for the decision.
No.
But, and so which led into the question of, people ask all the time, well, if you love the fucking book, why do you change the fucking book? And he goes, because it's called adaptation, not sameness. Like, it's not, you're not just putting the book on screen, you're adapting the book.
Book Kevin is not as interesting as show Kevin.
Well, and they said, they were smiling too, and they said, we also had to add some abs to the show. And so, because Kevin was an older, you know, politician, not as exciting as having him jogging in those gray sweatpants, ladies.
The legendary gray sweatpants.
The 2 pairs of underwear sweatpants. So yeah, definitely. I think that was an amazing adaptation and change. I don't think that there was anything that they pointed out that they were, though they were asked by audience members, you know, like, were there changes that you disliked, or was there anything that you like really like bumped heads about? It didn't seem that way really with either of them. Like, they, like, the authors didn't lose and were pissy about a certain point, or they seemed to, you know,
secretly there have to be some things that they're like, Tom Perrotta, he did have something that he was upset about. No, it was
the bullet. Yeah, it was okay. It was Nora and the bulletproof vest.
Oh yeah, yes, with the prostitutes and
like,
the stuff.
He's like, I just don't understand.
He's like, I don't understand. Yeah.
Like, I don't understand why we're doing this or whatever. And but he seemed like by the end he was like, okay, I see how you had to kind of make something more dramatic and visual. You know, it couldn't just always be in her head about her stuff. They had to find a way to make it visual. And this was a very outrageous way to do it, and he didn't know what to think of it.
And E. Lockhart, she had something also. She said at the end, I think it's towards the end of the book, now adapted for the show, she had written something that was grammatically like, and love, period, and this, period, and this, period. And they changed it, I guess, rhythmically in the script to be more commas, like, and love, and this, and this, and this. More of a list instead of punctuation with stops. And she's like, no, you can't do that. It seemed like such a small hill to want to die on, but she was like, I get you have to do your show, but like, it really needs to be that way. It needs to be said that way and written that way. And they were like, okay, you know, we could change it back. We didn't think you'd be so upset, but it was funny. That was the line. She was willing to change major points and minor points.
She didn't. It's because she didn't want it to like flow like that. Like it was like, and love, money, honor, loyalty. Let's say that was it. She wanted to be like, and love, and money.
Right.
Because it matters more. It hits harder. You know, you like listen harder.
It sounds like a good note for sure, because I mean, definitely. And so they took that note, but she said that was basically the only thing that she like pushed back on, which over the course of a whole book and I can't
even imagine how many times you'd have to wonder. Okay. So you guys, David E. Kelley.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I know we saw Norman Lear one year. I know we saw
James L. Brooks.
We've seen some amazing ones, but David E. Kelley getting this Showrunner Award.
Inaugural.
What did you guys think about this?
I feel like David E. Kelley is the TV man of my youth. Him and Stephen Bochco, who came up a lot, I feel like really defined television, certainly in the 80s, from your dramas in the 80s, which I watched only because if my grandmother was watching them or my parents were watching them. But things like L.A. Law and The Practice and Ally McBeal and Boston Legal. He was just one of those guys, like how you kind of like Junger with Thomas on like comedies for a period of time, or the guys from Cheers who were on every show that was successful a period of time.
Gina Burrows.
these guys, David E. Kelley or Stephen Bochco, like you feel like you saw them on their name was attached to everything, and it was. So it was kind of wild to
That's
see.
That's surreal, I felt like, to actually have him there.
It did.
It felt funny.
It did.
It
And
was
he's
like-
still making television now. Like,
Yeah.
he's still making relevant television now.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy.
So, Paul, did you get a chance to see this panel?
Yes. I was surprised because I have done a little bit of reading about showrunners. I've read both Mo Ryan's book, Burn It Down, which is an unflattering look at several showrunners. And I've also read another book called Difficult Men, which is another unflattering look at showrunners. And it sounds like there could be a type of demanding, insistent, relentless person that needs to be in charge of a show because there's so many people asking for decisions, needing things to be done. And David E. Kelley does not fit that mold, at least not the version we got on stage. Maybe when he's in his solo writer's room that he described on stage, as opposed to the bustling writer's room described by so many shows, maybe in that setting he is the general. But on stage, there was this mild-mannered, soft-spoken guy. Kind of nice to see that this type that gets described as just this domineering tyrant doesn't have to be the way.
Did it surprise you to learn the different styles that, like, because one of the early points, because he talked about a lot about Stephen Bochco, he told a great story of how he was a practicing lawyer, kind of long, boring days at the courthouse in between his cases being called up. So he wrote his first script through like 2 degrees of Kevin Bacon, kind of made its way to Stephen Bochco's desk, and he was flown out for a meeting and then was working on LA Law like that quickly, and a story that would never happen again. But he was talking a lot about the process and how Stephen Bochco needs people around. Even if they're not writing, he needs people around to write and to be creative. And David E. Kelley is like, I need the room empty and I need to be by myself to do it. Did it strike you that these 2 guys who made such massive television in the very similar spheres had such different approaches to it?
It did. It did. The writer's room paradigm is so prevalent, but it also creates a compromise in a way that people that went to, say, like art school, like me, kind of loathe the idea.
Right.
I mean, when you're in art school, there's like a desire to not even see other art because it could influence you, and then you would feel like your art was derivative and shit as a result. So people like Taylor Sheridan, I don't know if they have a writer's room, but his name's on everything that he makes, right?
By himself and no one else. And Tyler Perry's another one.
And it feels like a unified vision of what he wants the show to be. David E. Kelley was candid, sort of. He said that there are shows that his name is attached to that he maybe doesn't have as much influence as you might expect him to, given where his name is in the credits. That was as honest as he was going to be about that.
He did say, he acknowledged a couple of times where he was like, and then I handed that show off to so-and-so.
Right.
I birthed it and then handed it off because I went to go work on something else.
But then you see these legal shows like The Presumed Innocence and stuff, and Big Little Lies and Nine Perfect Strangers. They are his shows, but when you think of David E. Kelley, you probably think of lawyers.
And picket fences.
Picket fences.
I love Tom Skerritt. Tom Skerritt was like one of my favorite guys ever. Tom Skerritt's in the thing, like I'm showing up for Tom Skerritt. So
I can't believe he was doing picket fences and Ally McBeal at the same time. He said
I think that's what he said.
that's insane. Can you imagine?
No.
So one thing about that panel that I wasn't sure that I loved was that they chose to show a screening of Presumed Innocent, which was a great show, and Paul and I watched it.
Came out a year ago, almost to the
Highly
day.
recommend it. It was good. It made you, there was twists and stuff, so that was great. But it felt a little off to play it first and then do the Showrunner Award part, because people, unfortunately, attendees kind of wandered away because either they had already seen the show, it wasn't new, it wasn't anything that they hadn't seen or wasn't available. And so then when it was time to give the award, the theater was not nearly as full as it had been when it started. And I think that was kind of a bummer for David E. Kelley, because, I think he deserved a full theater with a standing ovation and everything. And while people who were there were definitely the most passionate fans, I think if they had reversed it and like done the award first, and then David E. Kelley could have left if he wanted to, or sat with the fans and watched the show. Either which way, I think it would have worked better that way.
Or if they had finagled the current episode of Nine Perfect Strangers, or maybe a classic episode of something that you'd never find, like Ally McBeal or something
like the
like
Dancing
that.
Baby episode, or the new season of Presumed Innocent, which when I saw that it was coming back and they're doing an anthology style, so it's going to be a new, same themes as the first season, but different cast, different story. I was like, whoa, maybe that. Then I went back and read my blurb again. I was like, maybe that's what they're showing us. They're showing us the first, like a teaser of the first. Even something like that, I think would have put more butts in the seats. But this show's out a year on Apple TV. Like, if you've seen it, you've seen it. If not, why are we watching this when a guy has a career? Give me 30 minutes of
just montage,
a montage of all of his different shows. Show me all of the things, because you could fill up 30 minutes just by doing 10-second clips of all of his shows.
And there's a lot of people who probably, again, don't know that he was a part of creating a certain show,
right?
Or writing a show. So I mean, there's no what's what I would say. There's so many shows that he did that you could have easily filled it up.
He actually had a interesting tidbit, which I noted because it came up in a different version in the showrunners and authors panel. So I noted, and I wanted to make sure I brought it up when we were talking. It came up a couple times this weekend on lawyer shows in particular. The language can be difficult. It can be kind of obtuse to get through and parse through. It's fast. It's complicated. And some of the themes can be kind of complicated and or difficult to watch. And he said, don't dumb down for your audience because you think that's where their constraints lie. So don't write to where you think your audience is. Write what you think it should be and bring your audience, make your audience rise up to it. Julie Plec in the We Were Liars and Tom and Leftovers panel, she said, one of the keys to making this kind of show, especially if you're writing a summer show, that you want to be good art, though, and not just fluff, is don't dumb down your scripts for young adult audiences, because it's a YA show, essentially. I mean, for all intents and purposes, We Were Liars is going to end up being like a YA, young adult novel kind of show, like We Were Pretty, or The Summer I Turned Pretty. Don't dumb down your scripts for a YA audience. Make them come up to the script. And I think, just as a tip for anyone writing, you could see where that would be the easy pull, right? Like, I want mass consumption of this, so I'm going to make it like simple. Julie Plec clearly has a career, and David E. Kelley certainly has a career as a writer. I'm inclined to listen to them when they say, like, challenge your audience. And, you know, I feel like TV also has gotten more simple. I feel like maybe it used to be.
Well, they called it the two-screen phenomenon, right? Where people are watching while they're playing on their phone, so you can't make the dialogue too complicated or too in depth, because
or visual. You have to say what's happening. That's important, because you can't rely on them picking it up visually.
So Julie Platt did make a good point. She did say, like, this isn't how teenagers talk, and we know that, but we didn't want them to sound totally like teenagers, because if you're trying to elevate the language and you're trying to, like you said, make it more artistic, then you can't. It can't be like, hey, what? You know, like,
bruh, scared. You know, it can't.
It can't sound like when you ask your teenager, like, how was school? Fine. But like, no, like, they have to be more articulate in order to make it interesting. But we recognize that's not real life.
But to also bring back in Kevin Williamson, though, that's one of the things that made Dawson Creek stand out among a plethora of teenage soap opera shows. These kids were spoken like, and not Shakespearean necessarily, but in an elevated dialogue that kids do not speak with.
No.
But if you were watching the show, you felt smart, and you made sure other people knew that you were watching it, that you told them you were smart because you were watching it. So, I mean, there was I don't want to say elitism, but there was a certain pride in being able to watch it and understand what was going on in the show.
That's true.
And I feel like people brought up The Pit on that one too. Like,
with The Pit.
Like
The Pit is a difficult show to watch.
It is because it's so realistic. But then at the same time, like, they didn't try to hide it from us. And I mean, like, when they rip open a woman's shirt to do CPR, you see everything. They don't try to cover things up or be cool about it.
And these aren't models, right? And it's not right.
Yeah. And so,
I mean, God, they showed the birth of a baby, like all the nooks and crannies of it.
Yeah.
Presumed Innocent was also a J.J. Abrams production, if you caught the title card. So J.J. Abrams was kind of, the spirit of J.J. was kind of all over day 2 of ATX.
While you guys were at the authors and showrunners panel, I was at one called Pain Points of the Indie TV Ecosystem. And it's funny that they call it an ecosystem. because it is a very fledgling enterprise at this point. You might be wondering, what in the heck is indie TV? Either it's on TV or it's just like a video on demand. And that is kind of where they're at right now. The big daddy in the room was Mark Duplass, who has been a champion of the low budget filmmaking industry for a very long time. By low budget, I mean they spend like $10,000 on a movie and get it made. Comes from a tradition of, they don't really fully write scripts. They write points that they need to hit, and then they rely on their actors to do the rest. And that's the way they make their movies. But he's had some success getting things on TV. He's had an HBO show before. He's had movies. He has a series on Shudder, which is like an AMC Plus offshoot based on his Creep character.
It's a horror-centered streamer, essentially.
Yes.
So that's what they do. They're not putting comedies or ha-has. It's all horror.
Creep is a very uncomfortable thing to watch, and they made more episodes of it. But so he's had some success, and he also works as an actor. He was on a show with Melanie Linsky a few years ago called Togetherness. He was a recurring character in the Mindy Project.
The morning show. He had a big turn on the Mindy show, I think, for 2 seasons or 3 seasons.
This is a guy that people recognize, and even he has trouble getting things greenlit the old-fashioned way.
So what did they mean by pain points? Like, what are they talking about?
How to get these shows in front of people's eyes.
Okay. Do we feel that as podcasters? Huh? We can make some good content, but then...
Introducing producer Mark Duplass. Come on, Mark. Come on out.
It's hard to get in front of people.
Well, they had representatives from a company called Kinema, which is a way to show your product, TV or movie, in a way that's like a screening through their service that people pay for, and you can like view it kind of together somehow, even though you may not be all in the same place. I didn't quite fully understand it, but they did say that this was a place where a lot of stuff was winding up.
So it's something that we can download and...
Yeah, it's called Kinema, but it's like cinema with a K. And then another representative was from a company called Seed and Spark. It sounded a little like Kickstarter or one of those crowdfunding kinds of things, but more specific to filmmaking and more streamlined, I guess, for that process, as opposed to just general, I need to raise money for my potato farm or whatever people raise money for on Kickstarter. Yeah, stuff like that. And so that's what they wanted to talk about, was pairing with those kinds of things, so that if you had an idea that maybe was niche, but you could probably find 1,000 people that would pay for it, that's not enough to get on TV, but it is enough to make a small budget thing worthwhile doing.
That sounds really fun and really accessible. Like if you were coming to a TV festival, there's a hot chance you have an idea that you'd love to have made, but you don't know how to do it and you don't have a big studio behind you, and how can you possibly do it? This actually feels like a very hopeful panel, although it's called Pain Points. Mm-hmm. It feels like it actually could have been called like solutions or ideas and opportunities for those who have a small idea who want to grow it.
So the Kinema is actually interesting because I've been at their website. It's kinema.com if you want to look at it. Essentially, it's like global screening tours. So they look for festival-worthy films. So it can't just be you made it in the backyard with your friends. It has to be has to be quality. It has to be quality which they screen. But then they've got a full video delivery platform, full suite of rights management tools for content owners, event management tools for screening hosts. So it sounds like they actually coordinate. Instead of having to go to Austin for a film festival, you can just tune into Kinema to this link globally and have a film festival. Essentially an online film festival. It sounds like something kind of COVID kind of related, where how we actually did a couple of festivals like ATX was from your couch. Mm-hmm. Kinema sounds like something you would do just to bring more eyeballs to it globally now, not just because of COVID times.
But you charge for it.
Yeah. It's like we can host a festival and you can be a host of it, and you can put together, I guess, a slate of films and do a whole festival via Kinema. So it sounds interesting.
The big one for the night, you guys, that all three of us were at, was the King of the Hill. I don't know. Reboot's not. I don't feel like reboot.
Revival, I think they were calling it.
Revival.
I like that.
That's actually the name of it. Was the King of the Hill Revival.
First of all, did you guys watch King of the Hill?
I started it and I watched several episodes. I don't know that I could tell you like if there was like a serialized aspect, if Luann ever went to college, or if any new neighbors ever moved in.
It didn't get that far.
Yeah, I don't think I got that far, but I generally know the characters.
I actually ended up probably being a bigger fan of King of the Hill than of The Simpsons, which is kind of crazy. Whereas I watched...
It's not at all crazy, because you are, like, never have a childhood part 2. So, like,
I watched...
You would like the adult men talking in an alley versus Bart Simpson on a skateboard.
I watched this... It's true. I watched The Simpsons, like, loyally, like, its first 10 years or so, and then I just kind of fell off. Life got there. King of the Hill came where I was a little bit older, obviously, and my humor was, I guess, very let's drink in the alley of that. But, yeah, that show, it hit... And yes, I watched it. If I didn't watch all 258 episodes or whatever, I probably watched the majority of them. So I was very excited to hear that they were coming back and with largely the same kind of voice actors and cast and stuff.
Obviously, being from Texas, like I see so much of our dads that, Paul's dad, my dad in Hank Hill. I mean, it's not propane and propane accessories, but it might be maintenance and reliability we're talking about.
Might be.
I say taste the meat, not the heat, still to this day, like once a week. And I barely grill. But it still comes up. It just comes up all the time for me.
Well, and my dad's a big griller. We got the trigger. We got the egg. We got all that stuff. So then there is something like adorably accurate about, and neither of our fathers are Texas men.
No.
But at the same time, there's a saying, I wasn't born in Texas, but I got here as fast as I can. Our dads really fit a lot of these things that these men are sitting and talking about. Your parents lived in Dallas for a while and had a back alley. And 100%, there were men out there talking about who's mowing the lawn and who's not doing it right and all that stuff. I would like to revisit it, and I absolutely will because of this revival, because I think I do need to be older. I do need to be where Peggy was in being a teacher and stuff. I think that I was too young and not, like, I could appreciate it as my parents being those people, but I didn't see myself in those people. Now I'm bitching about who's mowing their lawn and who isn't doing it right and all that kind of stuff.
It's the same way like Central Park. It's funnier if you're older because it's more about the adults than the kids, where obviously The Simpsons was much more about Bart than it was about,
Over time, Mike, you missed out on a lot of episodes.
Okay, well, from what
Marge and Homie had a lot of time.
Oh, homie. But I think Bobby and obviously Luann and Connie, like they were big parts of it. And Bobby is just the absolute funniest. But it was a show about Hank and Peggy and the guys in the alley and like their trials and tribulations. And it was real stuff. And I think the Texas thing, obviously I'm from New York, and so King of the Hill was a very Texas kind of show. I never felt like the show was making fun of Texas. I feel like it was being like a very love lettery. Well, because I think there are some aspects that if you're like the way they talk about Roger Staubach, like he should be like the like king of the universe kind of thing. Still, like that was a thing in the show, from the Dallas Cowboys. But that was like a recurring thing that would come up in the show. Like, well, that doesn't really resonate for me. But Mike Judge, who created the show with Greg Daniels, loves these characters and loves these people, and he loves Hank and he loves Peggy and he loves Texas. And the show always had a very sweet heart to it, even if it was being at its like most ridiculous. It was never making fun. It was always kind of in a very like humor from a very loving kind of scenario. So I was excited to see them kind of all back. And Mike Judge hit us with a little Hank Hill at the very end. He made us wait the entire night for a little Hank Hill, and Pamela Adlon doing Bobby, a couple of times.
Very funny.
But Mike Judge was there. Greg Daniels was there. A new EP they've brought on in the years since the show. Salad and Kay Patterson, he joined the show. Lauren Tom was on the panel. Toby Huss was there, who is taking on the additional role now of Dale Gribble. But he had previously done Con, which he'll continue to do, and Con.
Oh, I thought he was not doing Con.
He's credited as he's doing Con continuously. I know it's interesting that in today's age, but...
All right, let's just put a pin in that. I think I read something that he thought it was appropriate that they turn it over to a person
which definitely is consistent with how voice acting goes nowadays. So, but I had seen, but maybe it was just someone just copying and pasting because that's the voices that he had done previously. But also maybe because of Cotton and doing Dale, maybe it's also easier for him to not do the voice. But
so we have to talk a little bit of stuff that happened not on the stage, because they did show us. First of all, they did show us a great montage of where Hank Hill and the gang would be now, and
that was a little snippet of the beginning, right? It was
it was cool. I thought that was great. I mean, seeing them sort of grow into being
older. They were like the older animation. Like obviously Bobby's now 21, so he's obviously completely redrawn as an older adult now. But I liked how they kind of made Hank and Peggy. They're still Hank and Peggy, but they're older and they've got lines and they've got sags that they didn't necessarily have, 20 years ago. So I guess the setup for the show is that they've been in Saudi Arabia for the last 20 years, 25 years, and they're returning to America.
And they are shocked at what America has become. And so I think that that's going to be fascinating to see 2025 through Hank Hill's eyes.
What was the pitch? Andy Griffith's back and he's pissed? That's I think that was what Greg Daniels or Mike Judge said.
I think that's going to be amazing. I know for myself, I will turn it on for my dad and sit him in front of it in his recliner with his beer and say, I think you're going to enjoy this. And I think a lot of people are going to enjoy it. Definitely, if you're an old fan, you're going to love it. And I think if you're a new fan, you're going to find something to love it.
New season premieres on August 4th, 2025 on Hulu, Disney Plus, which I guess are all merged now.
Now, there's a little real world something that happened.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to get the premiere date out before then, before it becomes a bummer.
Yeah. This is sad. This is not fun or awesome or anything, but it did happen at the event. One of the voice actors, Jonathan Joss, who plays John Redcorn, was in the audience, and he created a minor disruption.
Yeah, he was not invited to the panel and apparently was feeling sad about that. And so he was only 2 rows in front of us. So we got a really good view of everything that was happening. He was very agitated. He was standing up and sitting down and standing up and sitting down. And then finally he went and found a microphone. And he said a bunch of stuff about, things going wrong in his life and being sad about Johnny Hardwick and all this kind of stuff. And security was definitely on edge. And I think the audience was definitely on edge. The panel got silent. To Toby Huss's credit, he tried to kind of engage him and try to simmer things down. I didn't feel unsafe in the situation in terms of, I think that ATX as a festival handled it well. They didn't, clobber him to the ground or humiliate him
he
do
seemed
anything like that.
He seemed like he was much more likely to be of harm to himself than he was of physical harm to himself than to anyone else. But it was very uncomfortable. The panel and Michael Schneider and Variety, who was the moderator, did not know what to do. They acknowledged that he was on the show and actually has recorded lines. He's actually recorded lines for 4 episodes, and they were like, Jonathan Joss, John Redcorn, and they right. They acknowledged and stuff, right. And he eventually left. I'm sure we don't know what happened out once he left the Paramount Theater, but
we saw him get up to leave though, and it was of his own accord.
He left. He wandered. He kind of wandered, right? He wandered from one mic, and then one of the ushers who actually had been yelling at me about recording actually then went and yelled at him about you couldn't stand at the microphone. It's the microphones they set up for Q&A at the end. And then so he left that microphone and went to the far microphone that had been set up for Q&A and was like, that man over there said that I can't stand at the microphone, but I'm going to
He said because he didn't know who I was.
Right.
And that kind of thing. Which, shout out to the volunteers, because what a difficult job. But I sat there and watched that man try to decide.
He was sitting right between the two of us. So when he jumped up, I noticed it because he was just I could reach back and touch him, and he was kind of right in front of you guys.
So the volunteer had to sit there and grapple with how to handle that. And that was a very difficult situation as a festival to try to handle that in a good way. I think ultimately, I'm really glad. I would have been really upset had I seen a security guard topple him to the ground or something. That would have made me really sad. And so I'm glad that they handled it as calmly as they could, because it only ended up taking a couple of minutes away from the panel in totality. If you look back while you were living it, it felt like an hour.
Right. Yeah.
When is this situation going to come under complete control?
But I was happy to see security. They were clearing because we were sitting to the side, so we could see security was moving in. They were ready on the wings on the stage, I guess, in order to protect the talent and stage.
Very large man.
A very large man who was ready to do something, and he was just standing off to the side. Why we're bringing this up, because obviously it's something that happened in the panel. This was Friday night. We're recording this Monday, just to timestamp it. It was reported today, late Sunday evening in San Antonio. Jonathan Joss was shot multiple times in a disagreement with a neighbor and was killed.
Was
Very
it
sad.
shocking?
Very shocking news that kind of broke out. It was made even more surreal because we literally had just saw him. We were obviously one of the last few people with the people in the Paramount Theater to see him.
Mm-hmm.
And who knows what that last 48 hours was like for him. But clearly he was a San Antonio native. He had returned home in the intervening 2 days. And the police arrived on scene mid-argument and had found him
Dead at the scene.
yeah, they tried life-saving measures. He was found at the curb and had been shot multiple times. That's the information we have as at the time we're recording. Obviously very sad, but his voice was in the show. He actually, it turned out, was not the original John Redcorn. He took over the role in the second season because the original actor who Jonathan Joss had worked with on some other project died in a car accident. So Jonathan Joss took over the role and then did it from season 2 to 14.
Gosh, do you think looking back they're going to end up like thinking like King of the Hill has a little curse with it?
I think they're probably not. They're probably not going to continue with the character, I would imagine, at this point.
No, but
So-
even with Johnny Hardwick, I mean, that was a really crazy situation,
Well, that was a
which I
sad
stopped
death
to like
altogether.
look too. That was
Yeah.
a situation where there was a welfare check, and because of how long he had been passed away, they couldn't even figure out how he passed. So, I mean, this group has had quite a bit of grief and kind of, I don't want to say curse, that's scary, but I mean, that's a lot of bad stuff to happen to a very small group of people. So our hearts go out to them and definitely to his family. He was definitely there with someone, maybe his wife, I don't know. But it was a lot.
So from there, we went to the backyard barbecue, the King of the Hill themed backyard barbecue, which I found when we were walking in, we almost didn't get in.
Yeah, very well attended, and including a lot of industry people and some stars. We got to I Spy Steve Zahn. That was fun.
And Keith David was sitting there.
David, who we all know.
We all know.
Single role that Keith David has ever been in.
Yeah.
I'm a super fan. Everyone knows of Keith David.
Of
I have a
course.
tattoo, Keith David forever on me. Here's the thing. They actually had really great food. They bothered to have hamburgers, and they had like Frito pie, which is a favorite of mine. They were doing like kind of Coke floats and lots of fun stuff. You had a stand-up where you could take pictures with Hank and the gang in the alleyway, and that was fun. They even had props with Alamo beer, and that was available. They had the specialty drinks.
They were out of the potato salad by the time we got to the line. I was very sexy. It looked delicious. I'm a big potato salad connoisseur. He asked me if I wanted coleslaw. I hit him in the face. Yeah,
They
it was like-
did have Alamo beer from the little bar that was
They
set
did
up
have
there.
like
Yeah,
customized
how
Alamo
fun.
beer,
How
but
fun is that?
yeah.
Overall, I wish they had done some King of the Hill trivia or something there. Yes, because I love interacting with other fans. And what I find to be a little bit difficult about these mixers that they do, like this, very cool and fun that they had like industry people and they had actors and stuff there. But because as ATX festival goers, we are trained into be cool, don't go up to them, don't ask for autographs, don't be like harassing them. It's a real conundrum about how exactly to behave in those situations because they're there, but you're trying to give them space, which creates kind of these pockets of people hiding against the wall because we're all TV watchers. We're not necessarily movers and shakers in the movie business or the TV business, right? So we have a hard time figuring out how to handle those situations. And I liked it when they had games and stuff more than cornhole. I liked it when they had ways
They also
for
had
us to interact.
table size Jenga.
Yes, like when I went to the Gilmore Girls Festival, they had like a bingo kind of situation. It was super fun. I sat with Mrs. Kim, y'all, and played bingo. That was fun because I could interact with her in a casual, normal, organic way because we were playing a game together.
I was surprised that game show night didn't return this year.
That was so fun. The Family Feud.
'Cause it
Festival.
seemed-
They did the Awinski thing instead, I think, of
Oh.
that, which I heard from when I was waiting online to get into, what was the panel you guys had the fast pass for that I didn't, that I had to wait on the other line? I don't remember what it was. It was
Skip it. We don't
Saturday
know.
night. Anyway, when I was waiting there, I heard that the woman was wearing an Awinski button. They were giving out like free Awinski for President 2028 buttons, and she said it was hysterical.
Well, that's great. I mean, that was
But I
the
missed the
thing.
game show though too,
We had to
which you
pick
did
and
very well on.
choose. Yeah, we had to pick and choose on what activities to go to, and so we went to the barbecue. I think they did a great job with it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, as like festival goers, and especially if you were like a general camp person, like you are not necessarily really great at conversations. And that can be really hard. I know you're smiling at me, both of you two are, but you know what I'm talking about. We talk for a living. Like we chat it up all the time.
Well,
And
we're talking about something
we
I
were
want to talk
struggling.
about.
We were struggling to figure out who to talk to and how to connect with anybody.
I think kind of same side of the coin, and for me, it was just a little too chaotic. Like there was the organization of, okay, we're going to get our cutout pictures here. Great. Give me that kind of structure. And here's the food line. Great. And then it was just the open 800 Congress room, which, you throw a couple of tables in a bar, like you needed a little more structure to that night. Either it'll be chaos for 45 minutes and then we're going to show something or do a trivia thing.
Like
add a little more structure to the event night. Even if you're going to do like the artists, you're going to let them mix and mingle and then they're going to sit down and sign stuff, like, and just do like some kind of table or something.
The year they had Parks and Rec and they had, remember, Little Sebastian
was there. Little Sebastian.
But they showed an episode, but they served food.
Yeah.
But they also
TV people need some structure like that. We don't.
We live in the 5-act structure. I need something, and then my commercial break, and then a something.
So that would be my only note back to festival people who are listening. If you happen to be listening, we loved the concept of the event, but we need an organizer to tell us how to communicate with one another and encourage us to interact with each other, because that is the prime time when, for us, we find out what other people are watching, what things, even we think about what to cover, because we talk to people and they say, we're currently watching this, and we say, oh my gosh, I didn't know 10 people were watching that. We should start covering that. And we had 0 conversations with people there.
I did like that it was a King of the Hill night, though, that it was the main attraction at the Paramount and go across the street to the Congress for the themed food activity, but just a little more structure on that part. And then we would have had like a 3-hour King of the Hill extravaganza, and I would have been extremely happy. I did get a great bottle opener, though. And I'm super pumped about that. So,
well, that does it for day 2 of season 14 ATX coverage. This is Paul.
This is Caroline.
And this is Mike. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to PCH Press Pass Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to that podcast and to all of our podcasts. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. We'll read it on air at one of our tapings, and it helps promotion of the show. We just appreciate you guys listening. Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.